Alex Answer here. It is August 2nd, in the year 2017. Going to pop in here for a brief economic and geopolitical news update. And if you like these videos, if you like these reports, please consider becoming a monthly supporter of what it is that I do. Independently here off the grid as I kind of take a look at what's going on. They're celebrating the rise of the Dow to 22,000. The Dow is soaring, and the media wants you in the market. As we could see this report from USA Today, it took years for the Dow to climb to 19,000, but in just months, it soared to 22,000, and it's not slowing down. With the Dow topping 22,000 and trading at lofty levels never seen before, Main Street investors might be wondering if it's too late to jump on the bull market bandwagon. They quote someone here from a financial group who is not going to rule out the Dow hitting 25,000 by the end of 2018. We have a GOP strategist that fears that Donald Trump is unprepared for the next 9/11. So far, the crisis that the President Donald Trump has faced while in office have all been of his own making. However, Republican strategist Rick Wilson warns that's going to change, and he says the way of the Trump administration so far has responded to its own self-inflicted crises that should terrify us all. A lot of people don't realize these people are placed in power, and they're not going to understand anytime soon. So the actions of Donald Trump, the actions of Barack Obama, the actions of George W. Bush, these were not actions that were done to benefit the United States. It'll become more clear as time goes on with Donald Trump. U.S. ignores Saudi beheading of 14 activists while targeting Venezuela. And this is by Carrie Weidler, published in activistpost.com. I'll try to mention the sources. But as the U.S. imposes sanctions on Venezuela and vocally decries their lack of democracy, President Trump's outrage is all but non-existent as a U.S. ally preparing to behead 14 students for protesting. Though the Venezuelan regime is undoubtedly corrupt, the president's outrage is meaningless in light of his lack of concern for the victims of U.S. allies. The Donald Trump-Saudi alliance, the death toll in Yemen, is turning the stomachs of people around the world. This isn't being done to benefit the United States. Now we move on. We talk about the sanctions. I'm going to read to you from Russia Today. Trump intends to sign final version of Russia's sanctions bill. President Trump will sign into law new sanctions against Russia, Iran, North Korea. And as I said in a recent report, Vigilant Shield 2007, it was an aerospace war game drill while they had Top Off 4 on the ground, and it simulated a response to North Korea, Iran, China, and Russia. Okay, so that was 10 years ago. And so we have the DoD documents that's how they were wargaming. That's what was on their mind 10 years ago. And that wasn't even the Donald Trump administration, nor Barack Obama. That was all going down during George Bush's administration. Think about that. But also think about the pictures between showing the vacationing of former President George Bush and Vladimir Putin. You know, people raise a lot of questions currently and their own conspiracy theories about collusion, but what about the things that have been going on for years between U.S. officials and Russia? So here's from RT. The president has now reviewed the final version and based on its responsiveness to his negotiations approves the bill and intends to sign it. The sanctions target Russian gas and pipeline developments by codifying 6 of President Obama's executive orders, right? Pushing Barack Obama's executive orders forward. The bill has alarmed the EU as it would harm the European companies taking part in Russia-EU energy projects. Top European officials, including those in Germany and Austria, have called the sanctions unacceptable and warned of retaliatory economic measures, which is another report that's in the news. Retaliation coming from a member of the Russian government. This, from Global Research, is the United States trying to start a war with Russia. Another day, another major escalation of tensions caused by U.S. actions. The recent downing of a Syrian jet by U.S. F-18 Super Hornet is just the latest installation in a series of U.S. provocations in Syria since Trump took office in January. Understandably, Russia responded to the illegal U.S. action. The head of Russia's Communications Policy Committee described the strike as an act of war. The sanctions are also being described as an act of war. We look over here and we see that in California, we have another ICBM test. The U.S. Air Force has successfully launched an unarmed ICBM from California. That's the fourth test this year. An Air Force statement said the test would show the effectiveness, readiness, and accuracy of the Western systems. Meanwhile, they're publicizing these tests of the THAAD system in different locations around the world. And they've placed the THAAD system in different locations around the world. Under Bush, it was placed in Eastern Europe, pointed at Russia. This is not a new thing. We are seeing a continuation of the war president chest and the baton being passed and people being emotional on the left and the right about this reality. We also have the mainstream media still hyping up the Muslim boogeyman, and this is a report from Mint Press News. Some of the things that come out from that website are fairly good. And I wrote, today the population trusts or distrusts the mainstream media based on how it feels about the story reported. If it fits their narrative, it's truthful. If not, fake news. And so we really see the mainstream media building up this Islamic threat, not really coming to the aid of those that are victims of hate crimes. They're only publicizing the hate crimes to further a divide within this country and cause fear and show the whole world, look at what America is devolving into. They're not working to fix the problem. They're not shining the light on very important issues that need to be discussed. So I'll just read a little bit here. The American boogeyman of terrorist threats, often used to further war and military intervention, comes with domestic consequences. In the U.S., Muslim houses of worship have been inundated with threats of bodily harm and property damage, as well as items like pigs' heads, desecrated Qurans left on their doorsteps. According to CARE, which is the Council on American Islamic Relations, there was a 91% spike in hate crimes against Muslims in the first part of the year compared to the same period in 2016. And so you also have people that are non-Muslims that are going to get caught up in this if someone is seen as not looking American enough. And so this article goes on to discuss the issue at greater length. Finally here, just to highlight to you as we close, Forbes magazine. There's a recent editorial that came out, and it said that self-reliant homesteaders are delusional and mooching off society, making wild assumptions, this mainstream media author, off of things he watches on the mainstream TV. He said Doomsday Preppers were one of his favorite shows. I've been contacted 3 different times between 2012 and just recently by Hollywood producers and people in New York curious about an off-grid documentary. They were fishing for something fringe. So there's something about me talking about traveling unarmed, having faith in the Creator, doing the right thing as my number one preparedness plan. Do what it is that I'm here to do. And if I'm meant to live here longer on this earth and continue teaching, continue speaking, then so be it. And I think people overlook morality, right, when it comes to preparedness. So they go for people that are in a certain fringe outlook while not showing interest in actually having a real sit-down discussion with a real off-gridder who isn't an extremist. So whether we're looking at the media, some of these documentaries, or a video game called Far Cry 5, where they're featuring like a doomsday off-grid country hillbilly cult, as they also amp up like the white American domestic threat, which goes along with this. It goes along with this. And that's why this is an important issue. So Daisy, who writes for this blog, has basically gone down, and I'll leave you a link, and address this person's psychosis. She writes, "It's always interesting when someone smug writes a clueless diatribe about another group of people being smug. So when I saw an economist for Moody's and Forbes had written an op-ed calling self-reliant homesteaders delusional, I knew that I'd be in for some misinformed hilarity. The article entitled Dear Homesteaders, Self-Reliance is a Delusion was published a couple of years ago on the Forbes website. You'll be forewarned the article won't be deep in the first paragraph when the author presents his claim to knowledge about self-reliant living. Comes from the fact that he's a big fan of shows about doomsday preppers, homesteader survivalists, and generally people who live off the grid. There has never been a well-made documentary about real off-gridders. People like sensational drama. You can watch Off-Grid Life on the Mesa and see some most unhinged off-gridders that you'd have to question someone's sanity to want to live amongst them. So the movie really manifested as almost like an anti-off-grid documentary that would truly cause someone to think twice, especially about the Taos Mesa area. There's a lot of things that are really bad and corrupt about Taos. Definitely do not recommend it. And there's a lot of people that are watching my videos and others, and they're trying to get good information about living off the grid, and you forget that the nation has been brainwashed to be against you, or to be against me, or to be against anyone who's going off the grid. This author here thinks that someone is a hindrance on society if they go off grid. He goes into these weird analogies. Well, what if you're like an old person and you slip and fall, and just replaying out these old arguments like, the off-grid community is a big strain on Medicare, as if people in the grid aren't on Medicare. There's plenty of people off the grid that do not have health insurance, that do not have food stamps, that live within their means, and that's why they're living off the grid. They want to get outside of the materialism. But there's also a lot of unhinged off-gridders as well, and my travels has shown me that as well. The problem is lumping everybody into one group. What's going to be interesting is how these people are going to have a different mentality when they want to go live off-grid if there's a disaster in their major city that they currently enjoy living within. So that's all for now. If you'd like to contribute to these video casts, please visit alexhansory.tv or join outsidethebox.vhx.tv.